Hey, quick episode of the Good Advice Podcast. Wherever you're tuning in from, this is a little bit of an unstructured episode, bringing you the good advice you need to know to grow and scale your business. And I'm your host, Blake Benz, host of the podcast for several years now. And I appreciate you checking out the podcast, whether you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener. Thanks for coming to our cozy little corner of the podcasting internet, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe you just stumbled across here and you're like, what the heck is this? Where am I? But we're going to be giving you some good advice today. And more importantly, talking about this conference I've been at. Let's dive into it soon. But before we do that, let's hear a word from one of our most consistent sponsors of the podcast. We'll be right back soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all of this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. So it is late at night for me recording this episode, and I had to get this one out. Typically, we post 2 episodes a week. There was a brief season that I posted 3 episodes a week, and it just got to be too much to manage. But the podcast has, been one of the most consistent things for my brand, and it's been a bit of a wild summer. It's been a bit of a wild last few weeks, so it's been tougher and tougher to get even 2 episodes out, even 1 episode, honestly. So we've been just squeaking these in at the end of the week, and I think this next week we'll be back to our normal publishing schedule. So if you're a longtime listener and you've noticed, hey, there's a little bit less of a pacing here, it's just because I've been very busy, and I've had some really good customers and just good conversations and all that to say. Today and yesterday, I just wrapped up a 2-day intensive mastermind, me and I guess about 30 other people who were all meeting with Damon Burton. I won't get too into the details on it because I think I'll have a whole episode breakdown talking about these things, just some takeaways for anyone who's just curious. It'll be a little bit of a different kind of episode because typically whenever we do a podcast episode, it's very much kind of explaining a concept, teaching something. And I think that one's just going to be here were my biggest takeaways. Here's what I learned. And then you can just take it or leave it, whatever's helpful you can use, and whatever else, just leave it on the table. So all that to say, Damon is the owner of SEO National. It is an SEO company. He's been running it for almost 20 years. And he only does SEO. He doesn't do anything else, doesn't do paid media, anything like that. It's just SEO. Damon came on the podcast, 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a long time, but I've stayed connected with Damon. He does really good business, has a lot of integrity, is extremely honest, just a great guy. So, and then a little bit of the details, and I'll repeat this for my episode. The way I got into SEO was I had a friend of mine who was going through a divorce, and it was just a very ugly divorce. And he had run an SEO business, but he was doing another business. And he was like, hey, think you just, deal with this? And if it crashes and burns, that's fine, but here you go. Here's the business. So all that to say, it was a offer I never really expected to have. But long story short, it's been something that I've kind of been quietly offering on the side, doing on the side, and made some pretty good money on it. Some decent money doing that over the last year. But I've wanted to learn more about it. It's all, and this is kind of the MO for me, is everything I do is pretty self-taught, which I'm learning more and more that it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just, you need time to really practice and learn and get some of the nuance. I mean, I think about podcasting and teaching podcasting. That's been something that I've only been able to do after 6 years of mistakes, essentially. But letting you in on not the secret, but I'd love to, when someone comes and works with good advice, it's a consulting conversation, a consulting relationship. We're typically talking about like business structure or sales or, leadership. There's a few different buckets that we typically play in. But when it comes to like done for you, there's a couple of sort of like marketing spins up my sleeve, that SEO has been a really good opportunity to fill in terms of, hey, this all makes sense. This is all really good, but can you just do a service for me? Anyway, neither here nor there. So Damon, have been chatting with Damon. I've stayed in touch with Damon. We talk every, maybe month or so, and we're active on each other's social medias. He's restarting his podcast, and so we were chatting about Podcastable and me basically helping like take over the production of his show, all this stuff. Well, on the side, he was saying, yeah, but I'm thinking about trying to turn all my SEO stuff into like a course or a mastermind or what have you. And I was like, bro, I'm in. Yes. Like I want to do it. And the other thing that's crazy about Damon is he has, and I'll repeat all this on the episode where I kind of break all this down. Damon has some pretty incredible customers, and he has some pretty insane revenue numbers. He's a multi-million-dollar business owner. He's not gaudy or showy or anything like that, but I mean, you see some of his home life photos on his Facebook. He posted something the other day about a pool they were putting in, and there's just things that he's been able to do because his business has opened many doors for him, and he's worked very hard for that. But has some pretty incredible customers like Tony Robbins, who's probably like one of the best known self-help business coach-y personalities around today. The Utah Jazz, the NBA team, is one of his customers. He's out of Utah, so that's how that actually came about. But some fairly high-profile customers, and then he posts often different sales he's made. He made 2 earlier this week for about $80,000 over the course of the next year. So Damon and if you listen to the podcast more than once, you know that I talk a lot about scams and people who are like all fluff. Damon is the literal opposite of that. Incredible guy, stellar guy. And it was when he mentioned he was doing this 2-day intensive, this 2-day mastermind or whatever you call it, I was like, dude, I'm in. I want to do this. Another reason for this too is with Podcastable, our highest tier is an SEO thing. It's, hey, we're going to help you rank your SEO or rank your podcast for SEO. So I knew I needed to learn more about it and just get better at it so I could increase the price point and the value of that too. So all this to say, keeping all of these specifics to a later podcast episode, probably one next week, there was something that Damon talked about today that I want to share on our episode today. Something that I've shared before, something that I've shared on social media. And it's something that I think social media convinces us is not true, but I'm sharing this because we need to hear this to have an appropriate understanding of business success as a business owner. And specifically, I've had an episode in the past that was basically called, How Long Will It Take for Me to Be Successful? Now, when I started Good Advice, I I had sold like $215,000, $220,000 in revenue. at my previous company. And I thought, yeah, if I take a fifth of that, that's a pretty good just starting salary for a business. I can live off 50, 60K. And I thought, yeah, for business year one, that'd be a good starting point. And if I could take that and grow that, I bet I could take it to 100K and 200K. And actually, if I think back to it, I actually thought by the end of my first year, I would be a multimillionaire. I don't know why I thought this. I had no sales background other than just kind of what I'd figured out. I didn't have a real product or service other than just a kind of snazzy name. And so I was in this position where I was totally in over my head, no idea what I was doing. But all that to say, I had this thought of, in hindsight now, of, man, if I had had a better understanding of how long the road is to finally be successful, there were many things I would have done differently. One of which would have been I would have spent my money much more slowly. I treated my business early on as a money pit of the more money I put into this thing, the faster it's going to fix itself. And the problem is that I call it a money pit because you can endlessly continue to put dollars into your business and see no return, see a negative return. There was a newsletter sent out from Y Combinator. If you don't know what Y Combinator is, just think of it as like an organization that helps startups. It's an accelerator, basically, is what it's called. And they put out this article or this newsletter, I guess, a few months ago that talked about just the state of the economy. It's such a, I don't need to beat this horse to death. You've heard the headlines, you've seen it all, whatever. But it was basically advice on how you can survive in today's economy. And there were a lot of different nuances there on like, the game has changed. There's not like endless investors lining up to throw money at projects. But the bottom line was you have to reduce the amount of cash you're spending. And they had some like really clever phrase for it. But basically what they were saying was you need to reduce your spending so that you can just simply survive. Like your goal is to survive long enough to turn your startup into something that generates revenue and eventually your net profit. In the same way, I've given this advice to many business owners. In fact, at our Tuesday morning group, for newer business owners, we've talked a lot about, hey, you just need enough cash to turn this into something meaningful. And often when we start a business, we think that that is like 3 weeks, when really it might be 3 years. Like I think that's the gut punch for some of us, is we don't realize that the stories we hear about people who start a business and they, break 6 figures for the first time and then they break 7 figures. Like our timeline is so short and concise instead of understanding that, hey, this might be a long game. I'm coming up on year 6 of my business in 2 weeks. October 1st is year 6. And I mean, I just had this conversation with my growth group. I thought at this point I would be like, I don't know, drinking a margarita on a beach. I think I thought I would have kids and I would just play with my kids all day. Like I would have, like the bills would pay for themselves. I wouldn't have, that my business would run itself. And, it'd just be great. Instead, I probably work more hours than I ever have before. The business does infinitely better than it ever has before. I'm extremely excited for the future of my businesses. But there's been nothing easy about this. In fact, it's been an extremely difficult year managing everything with the businesses. So all that to say, I think if I had known the road more accurately, I would have been smarter leading up to it. Most specifically, just spending my cash more wisely. And that bias comes out a bit with like new business owners who come to me and they're like, hey, I want to hire you, I want to work with you. And I typically encourage them to save their money. I'm typically like, yeah, you know what? Why don't you see if you can sell this first? And if you can sell it, come back to me and then let's scale this thing. Or I had a friend of mine who runs he was starting an ad company, an ad agency, and he didn't have any customers yet. But for him, I said, hey, you need to be comfortable spending money and it going nowhere because you haven't tested. And in his case, he was doing advertising on TVs, and his business model was basically to put TVs up into local stores. So it wasn't just like advertising in general. So I was like, hey, you're going to spend money on me. You're going to spend money on, the TVs, what have you. You just need to be comfortable spending money that you're okay losing, which in his case, he had 40, 50K saved up. And I was like, well, I wouldn't spend 40, 50K, which by the way, this may surprise you. A lot of people do that. Like I was talking to a business owner who had around 25K and they were wanting to do like a food truck. And they were like, yeah, well, I think we're going to just spend it on a truck and make it into a food truck. And I was like, no, hang on. It's not so simple as I spend it all on a food truck and now I have a food truck. There are extreme costs just with running the business. What you want to do is you want to try to find a beat up truck you can repurpose or you can fix up for, 2 or 3K. And then you have the leftover cash to run this business for the next year and see, is there any merit to it? So in the same case with this guy, I was like, okay, you got 50K in cash. Why don't you drop 5K and see? And then at the end of the day, you're only out 10% of your savings. Like that's worst case scenario. A good scenario would be you break even. And then best case scenario, you make a lot of money, right? But the pathway to doing that, like I try to be very upfront and honest with people. And like I said, if the expectations aren't aligned, I will usually tell them, you know what, hold off on spending money, get a sale, get some customers, and then let's come back and have this conversation again in 6 months. Which, by the way, I think it's just a better way to do business. I think it builds trust faster. And even if the person never comes back, I think when your head hits the pillow, you ran your business the right way rather than, always chasing the next sale. So why did I bring up Damon Burton? Well, this is what I so admire about Damon is in the first day of this mastermind, first few hours, Damon was talking about contracts and contract links with SEO. And he was asking questions like, what do we know about SEO? And, responses were like, it takes time. And he was like, yeah, it takes time, but how much is that? How much time is a lot of time? And I know certain people are probably thinking 6 weeks or 3 months or 6 months. And he took a bunch of, I don't think he took any answers, but he gave out a number of examples. But he said ultimately, SEO takes 1 year minimum. And he said, when I sit down with a customer or a customer to be, I say, hey, if you're going to invest in this, it's going to take a year. The goal is to get you to page 1. And when I say goal, I don't mean like an aspirational, one day. It's by the end of year 1, you're going to be on page 1. That's the goal. That's our outcome we're shooting for. But you need to know that it takes 1 year. And he had a couple of examples of customers who are like, all right, yeah, great. I'll try it for 6 weeks. And he's like, no. There is no trying it for 6 weeks. There is no trying this for 3 months. This is going to take a year, and either you're in or you're out. Now, in Damon's case, his price point is, it's pretty impressive in the sense of 3 or 4K a month. It's a 40, 50K contract, all that kind of stuff. But what I liked about this is and we went through his whole SOPs and client communication and some of the stuff I already, since I work heavily with business owners anyway, some of this was just good to compare notes with another business owner. But also as someone who, he does infinitely more revenue than I do as a multi-millionaire business owner. It was good just to get some insights or rather some confirmations on okay, we do the same thing here. So I'm doing the right thing. Right. Anywho, So the thing I really appreciated, though, was his candidness on the journey. It's going to take a very long time. You're not going to see any results immediately. And in fact, as we were talking through like the high level conversations, we were talking about like 2-month and 3-month checkpoints with your customers. And he's like, well, I mean, you're not going to, like, what are you going to say at month 3? You're not going to say, hey, here's all your rankings, because nothing's changed. Like, it takes time. It takes time for these things to change. And, we broke it all down, and this will all come in a later podcast episode, but the like skeezy, sleazy, like what people do to like get quick sales in SEO. And like, if you've ever been on Fiverr, for example, there's like people who they'll be like, yeah, we'll sell you, 200 backlinks for $25, and how none of that does anything at all. But good SEO takes time. And as he was really harping on this, he showed his contract, and his contract has it in there like in 4 different places in big, bold letters. This is going to take time. You will not see immediate results. As he was talking about this, I just thought to myself, his perfect customer really understands this concept, that it takes time. And for you, wherever you are in your business journey, if someone who's been in business 20 years, they've made it. I mean, I would say Damon's made it. And they're talking about how long it takes for their product to work. But if you check out Damon's Facebook, he's talked about his journey a lot and how many years it's taken to be successful. I think if we have that accurate understanding, I think some of us wouldn't be entrepreneurs anyway, because we think it's a lot faster than it really is. But more importantly, it's an encouragement to you. It's an encouragement to you to understand you may not be broken. Your business may not suck. It's still simmering. It's in the Dutch oven. It's not a crock pot. It's still, in the oven. It's not on the counter, right? And that doesn't mean there aren't things that you can adjust, fix, or change, but it is something to keep in mind. Anyway, it's late at night. My toddler's waking up, so I should wrap this thing up. Think about that and stay encouraged. It takes time. It's not an overnight fix. And occasionally you'll run into someone who they do have an overnight success story, and that's great for them, but it's not the story for everyone else. Hey, that's today's Good Advice podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you later, and looking forward to what 6 years of good advice will bring. See ya.